recruiting, and we started recruiting. One of the big things, you asked me about the steps of the program, one of the big things that happened was when we first started our program, scholarship money was dollars. So we had so many dollars to work with. Mm-hmm. And as you know, you have out-of-state tuition. So if we recruited an out-of-state student, we really used up our dollars. And so we didn't recruit out-of-state at all. We just didn't do it. And so we recruited Ohio. I went to Youngstown, never had any luck in Youngstown. Went to Cleveland, never luck. And I was going all over the state because we had, and I don't know exactly when it was before Coach Underhill got here or shortly after he got here that they made the decision, no, you're just going to have a scholarship. And whether it's in-state, out-of-state, doesn't matter. It's a scholarship. So
you had X number of scholarships.
Yes.
So prior to that, some kids were on partial scholarship and some were on full scholarship, and then after that it was all full scholarship?
Yes. And it was a process. It was a process. And in fact, we had a young man by the name of Lyle Faulkner who we had recruited, given him $1,000, and we went down and played Miami of Ohio, and he had a great game, and Miami came after him. And so we had to give him we immediately upped him to a full scholarship, to keep him. So that was the period you were going through. You had so many. But when we went to full scholarships, where it didn't matter whether it was in-state or out-of-state, it made a big difference because now it opened up the door where you could go to Louisville, you could go to Indiana, and so we had tremendous success in Indiana. And then we started recruiting. I think the biggest thing that we did when Coach Underhill came, because we had never done this on any kind of scale, was recruit junior college players. And at that time, if you were a Division II school, you had a distinct advantage over Division I schools when it came to junior college players, because at the Division I level, the player had to graduate from the junior college. Mm-hmm. At the Division II level, he had to have 72 transferable degree credits. So what you had happen a lot of times is a guy would have one course short of graduating. Mm-hmm. Maybe there was one class that he just couldn't handle, a math class or whatever. And so we went after those type of players that were good students, but they just they had 72 hours, and they might have needed 80 hours to graduate or whatever. And those are the kind of players we went after, and we had a lot of success. On our national championship team in '83, Gary Monroe was a junior college transfer, Anthony Bias was a junior college transfer, and Freddie Moore was a junior, and they were all good enough students. So that was a big advantage that we had, and that changed when Coach Underhill came. We had recruited a junior college player prior to Ralph coming, but we really concentrated on it when he came.
It seemed you got some success for foreign players too.
Yeah,
right?
we did. Well, that was later on. The under NCAA rules, you're permitted to take your team to Europe every 4 years. Mm-hmm. And what we did is we had a friend in Cincinnati who was kind of like an agent, a sports agent, and he would bring teams from foreign countries over here to play exhibition games. Now, you can't do this anymore, but at that time, you could bring a foreign team over here. They would play an exhibition game
against Wright State.
Against Wright State, and so we signed a contract. His name was George Spencer. He was an agent out of Cincinnati, and he had a company that would bring teams over. And in exchange for that, if you did that over a 4-year period, then you got a free trip to Europe, all expenses paid. Oh, wow. So we did that. It would cost you maybe, I'm just guessing here, maybe $5,000. You'd have to, if you brought the team from Yugoslavia or wherever, you gave them $5,000, and then after 4 years, you got your trip. Well, we took believe it or not, a 24-day trip to Europe. We went to this was when this would have been in the 91-92 season. Mm-hmm. We were in Germany for 7 days. We went to Holland for 7 days. We went to Belgium for 3 or 4 days, and we finished up in Paris, France. We played 10 games. It was too long. 24 days with teenagers that got girlfriends. It was tough, but it was an unbelievable trip. And what happened is we became friends, or Ralph and I became really good friends with the gentleman in Holland who ran their Olympic program. and to the extent that he wanted to know if we could bring players from Holland to the United States that wanted to play basketball. And so we did. I mean, the first player we brought over here was Mike Nahar, and Mike was on that national championship. I mean, not that, on the team. On the NCAA team, the team that went to the tournament in '93. That was our first.
Wasn't there a big center from Egypt or something like that?
Well, that was later.
Okay,
that was later, after I was gone. Yeah, there was. But that's how that all got started, and it through our friendship with his name was Vladimir Hager, and I even brought a couple high school kids over here and had to place them in high schools. And there's a funny story here because we brought this young man over. His name was Marco Pekar, and he came from Holland. He was supposedly one of Holland's finest basketball players. He was 6'9", and I had to find a high school that would take him and get somebody to house him. And so Beaver Creek was where we selected. I didn't really know the coach at Beaver Creek that well at the time. My son later on played for him, but at that time I didn't know him that well. But I put him there. And of course, this word spread. I mean, everybody knew this kid, 6'9", big body from Holland, was at Beaver Creek High School. And Bobby Knight came over and looked at him and so on and so on. So anyway, I go watch him play 3 or 4 times, and I just don't think he's good enough. And I remember telling Ralph, I said, Ralph, he's not good enough to play for us. And so we quit recruiting him. And I'll never forget this, because I was walking out of the Nutter Center one day.
And what year was this, roughly?
Gosh, this would have been in early 90s.
Early 90s, okay.
And Page Mulholland, who was our president, had worked out in the Nutter Center, and he was walking out, and he saw me, and he yelled to me. And I go over, and he says, Jim, what happened? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, that player you brought over here from Holland, he went to UD. What happened? I said, well, we didn't think he was good enough. And he tapped me on the shoulder. He says, that's good enough for me.
and did he turn out to be a
No. He went to UD. He signed a scholarship. Great kid. I mean, just a great kid. And he was there for 4 years, but he never turned out to be the type of player everybody thought he would be. But that's how our foreign connection started.
So talk about the arc of the growth. So Ralph takes over. The program's going great. What was the attitude on campus towards the team? Did they come to games and stuff?
Yeah, well, we played in the PE building, which is now the bookstore.
Right.
And we played in there for a significant period of time. And, it was packed. I mean, there were nights when it wasn't packed, but there were nights where you couldn't get in. I mean, it seated about 2,800. When Mike Cusack became the athletic director in '83, they put in some special seats, chairback seats, so it wasn't all bleachers. But we played in there for a significant period of time, and the program, thrived, and we won the national championship. I think that's that's one of the most amazing things to me is 13 years after we started a program from totally scratch, we won a national championship, and that's unheard of. And so basketball was a big deal on campus. I mean, it was a big deal. And when Page Mulholland came, he came from Arizona State, and he I think had a lot to do with the athletic program there. I know he did because Arizona State had been put on probation, and when Page came there, he made perfectly clear that if there was any cheating going on, you better have your letter of resignation on his desk the next day. And but he was very supportive of athletics, and the Nutter Center, I think, is the single most important thing that's happened to this campus.
So when did the team go to Division I?
88, 87, 88.
And can you talk about that decision?
Well, that was, we were to the point where we were actually playing some Division I teams.
I know you played Louisville one year, right?
We played Louisville the year we won the national championship. We had played Bowling Green.
We won the national championship. Did Louisville win the national championship?
No, they went to the Final Four.
Went
to the Final Four, got beaten in the championship game. Our game down in Louisville was a very competitive game. I mean, I think we ended up losing by 14 points, but it was very competitive. We could play with them. I mean, it was not a blowout. I mean, we were down there and we were very representative. It was the only game we lost during that stretch. I mean, we got beat at home by, and it's amazing that year we were 10-0, played Central State in the PE building, and they beat us by 20 points. And then we lost another game in overtime later on. And then we won a game down at Kentucky Wesleyan on a last-second shot, and that turned our season around. And from that point on, we just got better and better and better, and ended up winning the national championship. But winning the national championship really just exploded the basketball program in terms of, it gave you instant recognition. You were thought of. It helped our recruiting because we went to New York City and got a couple players out of New York City, which we had never done before. And so the
88 then is Division One.
Yeah, I think it was 87, 88 when we went Division One.
And you had this. You couldn't be in a conference or something. For a couple
it killed
years,
us because we had, when we went Division One, the concern that Coach Underhill and I had, and it kind of turned out to be true. It took a while. Is we had the players to go Division One. I mean, we were good enough to compete on the floor. But what Ralph and I's concern was, do we have the infrastructure? Like, do we have a full-time strength coach? Do we have a full-time academic advisor? We shared
does the university have a full commitment?
Yes.
Not just you coaches, but does the university?
We shared a secretary with 17 other coaches. We didn't have our own secretary. I mean, it just. But the impetus to go to Division One was real, and we made that move. And for the first several years, if you look at the results, those first several years, we were pretty good. I mean, we had several really good seasons, but it caught up with us. We no longer had that huge advantage that you have as Division Two
with the transfers
and we lost some kids to academics that we had worked really hard to get, and I know that if we'd have had a full-time academic advisor, that would have never happened. I mean, or we could send kids to summer school like they do now. Now they have a full-time academic advisor. They send kids to summer school. All those things have occurred, which is good. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying at that time, we didn't have any of those
things. You were still not quite up to other Division I schools. Probably.
Yeah, and
but you were playing UD at that time.
Yeah,
right?
Well, we played UD when, as soon as we went Division One, UD agreed to play us, and we played on a Saturday afternoon and got obliterated. I mean, we lost by 24, 25 points, but they agreed to play us, and that kind of started the Gem City Jam. We played, I think, 8 times. They beat us 5. We beat them 3. Great atmosphere.
Well, talk about that for a while. So you were in the same conference even as you?
No, we weren't. They had gotten out of the conference when we got into it.
But Xavier was in the conference.
Yes,
right?
Xavier was in the conference.
What was that? Mid-continent?
It was called the. It was called the Mid-Continent, but it changed names there. It was Midwestern Cities Conference. Then it went to the Mid-Continent Conference, and Xavier was in that league. Yeah.
Well, so UD sort of welcoming, playing for 8 years, and then what happened?
I don't know. I think I get asked that question all the time. Why don't they have the Gem City Jam? It's really sad. I think it's a money thing. I think there's 2 big issues. The basketball program at UD is their cash cow. They have to have a successful basketball program because that's their cash. That's where their athletic program is supported. They don't have big TV contracts. They're not in a big time league, so to speak. They're in the Atlantic 10, which is a good league, but it's not the Big East. It's not the Big 10, so they don't get a huge amount of revenue. So they have to play home games, and because of that, they don't want to go across town and play on the road and relinquish that money they're going to get with a home game. That's part of it. The other thing is, and this is sad, but I think there's this perception that if they come over and lose to Wright State, that it's going to diminish their standing in the community. That they're
going to bleed fans to Wright State.
And that's not going to happen. I mean, the first time we beat them, which was in 1990, we beat them at their place, 101-99. They had a good team. I mean, that team went to the NCAA tournament and won a game. and we beat them on their home floor, and it didn't hurt their program.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
It just so. I know Wright State would love to resume the series. I think it will be resumed someday, but I don't see it happening. There's become a renewed interest because Wright State's having a good season this year,
right.
And one of UD's things has been, well, we don't want to play you because your RPI is so low, which is that's just an excuse that doesn't have anything to do with it. But I mean, I think it will happen again. It's too good of a. I mean, Cincinnati plays Xavier, Kentucky plays Louisville. It's been interesting, Dan. The only reason Kentucky and Louisville play each other is because the governor got involved.
Mm-hmm.
For years they didn't play each other, and the governor finally said, "Hey, look, you're going to play."
Well, the thing of it is, Wright State's just got to win, and they got to elevate where they're above, or at least equal to the RPI.
Yeah. No,
then I think public demand will dictate.
Will help.
So Ralph was here from 78. 83, you win the national championship. 1990 or 1988, you go Division I. 1990, the Nutter Center's built.
Yeah.
And talk about from that point on a little bit.
Well, it was an exciting time because we had a president that was very supportive of basketball. In Page Mulholland, he took a lot of heat from faculty members. I don't know if
about building the wasn't here then.
Yeah, it was not good. I mean, the faculty felt like every penny that was being spent on the Nutter Center was coming directly out of their pockets.
And was that the time when there's an increased sort of tension between some faculty and
well, the Nutter Center was very controversial.
So that sort of triggered it.
But he stuck by his guns, and I will say to this day, I think it in a lot of ways is the single most important thing that happened on this campus in terms of promoting the campus, because you have all these people that come to events here that would never come on our campus.
Well, not to mention the economic impact around restaurants and hotels and everything.
But just for the university, like the state volleyball tournament has been held here for years. The wrestling tournament was held here for several years.
Until the Schottenstein was built, right?
So you bring all these students and fans to the campus that would never have come to our campus, and so they see it and they say, hey, that might be where I want to send my son or daughter, or where I want to go to college. So the Nutter Center was really and it was exciting to come down and watch them build it. And and
then the first couple games, holy mackerel, right?
First game we played in it, we played Tennessee State, and we trailed the whole game, and it was nervousness and effort because we were a better team than Tennessee State, but we just were nervous. Huge crowd, sold out crowd, and we won the game on a last second tip in by Sean Hammond.
Now, what game is it where the guy's falling out of bounds? And
that happened. That happened in that was the game we played at Kentucky Wesleyan.
Oh, that was still back in '83. All right,
that was the play that kind of brought our team together. We were playing Kentucky Wesleyan. Yeah. Kentucky Wesleyan was a great basketball team. We had sold out crowd down there, and they were shooting a free throw with a 1 point lead, and he missed the free throw, and we came down the floor and Tom Hosapple took a shot from the top of the key. This was before the 3-point basket, and he missed it, and the ball took a crazy bounce, and our point guard, Mike Grody, just caught it with one hand, threw it up to the basket, and went in.
He was kind of falling out of bounds.
Falling out of bounds. I mean, he could do it 1,000 times. It never happened again, and it went in. And that thing just... We were going to come home after the game. I mean, we had checked out of our hotel room. We were going to get on the bus and come home. We had so many fans down there. It was such a chaotic thing. We decided we're going back to the hotel. We checked back in our rooms and stayed all night. It was it just brought our team together.
That's wonderful.
I mean, it was and it propelled us.
And so many great stories. So many great things happened. You and Ralph guiding the program from the '90s. But it seemed like his last 2 or 3 years, things started to tail off.
Yeah, we and there's a lot of reasons for that.
And we're talking maybe start '93 or something like that, right?
Well, I mean, we were in a league finally. We got in the Mid-Continent League, and I to this day I think if we'd have been in a league when we went Division I, that was the only thing that in hindsight you wish would have happened. That we when we went Division One that
got in the league, right?
Got in a league.
Because there was no rule about not being in a league.
No, it was just we couldn't get in one, and for whatever reason, we just couldn't get in one. So we kind of like were stuck there in independent, and for 4 or 5 years we had good records, but we didn't get even a smell of the NIT, nothing. And so I honestly think what happened was these auxiliary things I've talked about caught up with us. They just caught up with us.
You didn't have the infrastructure.
No, and
so you couldn't do the academic advising. You couldn't coach.
We had an academic advisor, but she was the academic advisor for everybody. And it really wasn't until Coach Underhill was let go, and I had an interview, and I spelled things out to the committee. These are things that have to be done. Whether I get the job or somebody else gets the job, these are the things that have to be done if we're going to build a program here. And all those things came to fruition. I mean, they got an academic advisor, they got a full-time strength coach, and I don't have any regrets about that, but that I think hurt us.
So, did you enjoy your year as head coach at Union?
Well, it was a very trying year. I mean, that whole experience.
And that was 96. That was my first year in 96.
It was a very trying year because to review it, I mean, we had gone through a couple of tough years, and we had our best player, Vitaly Potapenko, goes pro, and the reason he went pro, a lot of people don't understand. And we had a president at the time, Harley Flack, who, for whatever reason, made it difficult for Vitaly. As a foreign student at Wright State, you're required to take the TOEFL test of English as a foreign language.
Right.
And Vitaly spoke English, but not fluently. And when he came, so that they would admit him provisionally. He took the test, they admit him provisionally, but he had so many. So anyway, Vitaly took the test, got a 400 on it, which is 100 points below. Well,
you need a 500?
You need a 500. So we got him some help. He went to classes to prepare for the test, and he took it again. And it was right at the end of his, would have been his junior year. He took the test. He got a 495.
Oh, jeez.
And President Flack wrote him a letter and said he had 1 month to get a 500 or he was dismissed from the university. So Vitaly...
They would kick him out of school.
Yeah.
After 2 years?
After 2 years.
And
he was academically eligible. He was fine. And I don't know why he felt this way. But anyway, Vitaly put his name in the NBA draft. He just said, heck with it. I'm going to go to the NBA. And he had no intentions of doing that. So that started the process. And then Coach Underhill what was it? It was right after he went to Chicago for the conference media day, and he came back and he stopped at Myers and he was arrested.
96.
Yeah, was arrested for allegedly shoplifting, and the university decided to terminate him. And so here I was.
It was just sort of an accident or something?
Well, Ralph and I would go to lunch numerous times, and he would forget his billfold. It's kind of a funny thing. I would never wear sweatpants because you can't put your bill. Stuff falls out of your pocket. Right. So I would just never wear them. I would always wear regular pants, maybe a sweat top, but never pants. He would always wear sweatpants. So we would go to lunch, and a lot of times he would forget it, and I'd pay for it, and then he'd pay me back. And I don't know what happened. I really don't know. I mean, Ralph ended up getting acquitted of the charges. He got a settlement from Myers because it was a bad deal. But the university, I think, overreacted and terminated him, and it just threw things into a chaotic thing. Yeah. I was named the interim coach. We didn't have Vitaly. We were playing arguably the toughest schedule in the history of the program. We played Kentucky. We played Louisville. We played 5 Mid-American schools. We played UD. I mean, we did all this because...
a game I remember clearly was Toledo, because I had just come from Toledo. And I remember we led that whole game. And I was thinking, geez, And then somehow at the last minute or two, we lost the game, like 73-71.
Yeah. Well, I started 3 freshmen, a sophomore, and a junior. And we just, you're right. I mean, we had numerous games like that where our UD game, we lost at the end. I mean, we lost, I think, 10 games by 7 points or less. It was just, you had no experience. We played Louisville down at Louisville and lost by 4. I mean, we were very competitive in a lot of games, but it was just the fact that I started 3 freshmen, a sophomore and a junior, and sometimes a senior. But it was a very difficult year for me, and I can remember at the end of the year saying to my wife, I said, if things don't change here, even if I get the job, it's going to be difficult because of what I've said before. The things you need to have to be successful. I mean, I look now. The coaching staff has like 5 assistants. I know it's and I'm not complaining, but it's different today.
Oh,
it's just totally different.
And ironically, probably. It all changed after you guys left.
Yeah.
You and Ralph left. It didn't change like that, but it started.
Right,
to change.
right.
But none of them had the success you and Ralph had.
I know. And you can't go back and change things, but I do think it had the way Ralph was treated, and then what happened to me, and then some other things. I really had impacted our attendance.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've fully recovered from that now.
There was an emotional connection to you and Ralph, right?
There really was. There really was. It was. I mean, we were kind of like the perfect couple. I mean, I tell people this. Ralph never wrote a letter in 18 years. Every letter that went out of that office was his name on it, I wrote. Mm-hmm. But it was because we each had strengths. I was very well organized. I was extremely organized. That was something he didn't care about, okay? Yeah. I mean, when we first met the first time, he opened his billfold and he had all these little scraps of paper, and he says, "This is my recruiting list, Jim." Mm-hmm. Well, but when it came to X's and O's, when it came to recruiting, when it came to finishing a deal with a player, people have asked me many, many times, how were you able to schedule some of the people you scheduled? Well, it was because of Ralph. Ralph he was likable. So he would call somebody up on the phone who had no intentions of coming to Wright State and playing, and before the conversation was over, he would have talked them into coming to play. He was just that kind of person. And it was. It was.
So you leave Wright State and you go on to great success at Northmont?
Yeah, I did. That's kind of funny because Jack Butler was on our staff. He was an assistant coach at UD for years, and when that coaching staff, Coach Donner,
Jack went to Career Services.
Yes.
After
he came over.
Wright State Career Services.
Yeah, he came over. Well, when he came to Wright State, he was hired as the academic advisor. And we lost a coach. Ralph and I lost a coach, and we both thought about Jack because Jack was just down the hallway from us. And I can remember Paige Mulholland was the president at the time. And he told Jack, because the coaching position offered more money. Uh-huh. The assistant coaching position was more money than what he was doing as academic advisor. So Paige told him, "Look, I don't want you to take that job because it's more money. I will increase your salary as academic advisor if that's what you want. I don't want you to do it because of money." Well, he took the coaching job because that's what he wanted to do. So anyway, when all that happened and we weren't rehired, Jack and I, our contracts were such that they had to pay us for another year. So we were in an office together. Mm-hmm. And Jack lived in Inglewood. And he told me one day, he said, "Jim, the basketball coaching job at Northmont High School opened up. You'd be great." And I said, "No, I don't think I want to do that." And it was kind of funny that I felt that way because I still teach the coaching class here at Wright State. And where kids that want to be coaches, they take this class. And I've always said in that class that it would be so much fun to coach at a school where kids from the 3rd grade, I don't know if you've ever gone to a high school game north of town like Versailles and St. Henry's, and You go to one of those games and you see fourth graders and fifth graders and sixth graders in their shirts, and they get out on the floor when the team comes out. Real community thing.
Yeah.
And it always, when I would go to some of those games when I was recruiting, it would always, I would just think it was so cool. So I thought, that would be something I'd really like to do. Well, Northmont was kind of that way, and here I